Hey everyone, welcome back to Still Only 35 Cents. We've got a special edition for you today, another page by page. This time, it's this Amazing Spider-Man #1 UK price variant that I recently got back from CGC at 4.5. We're going to take you through this book, page by page. For the uninitiated, The Amazing Spider-Man #1 is not the first issue to feature the appearance of Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker. That honour lies with Amazing Fantasy 15, which debuted in August 1962. This issue, however, is the first issue in this historic ongoing series, and did feature the first appearance of Jonah Jameson, the Chameleon, and the first crossover with the Fantastic Four. Whilst not as striking as Amazing Fantasy 15, this cover by Steve Ditko features Spider-Man seemingly trapped by the Fantastic Four in a glass chamber who surround him in their headquarters, the Baxter Building. The cover promises the reader 2 feature-length stories featuring our famous wallcrawler as well as introducing the threat of the Chameleon. You'll note the UK price variant features a 9D instead of the 12 cent featured on the regular US edition, as well as a blank space where the month would be. It is worth noting that the UK price variants were printed from the same plates at the same time as their US counterparts, albeit in smaller numbers, making these true and much rarer first prints of this book, with some collectors even claiming that these books were printed first in the run. Consistent with other early UK price variants, you'll notice the book features sole distributors in the United Kingdom, Thorpe and Porter, added underneath this encyclopedia advertisement page, which together with the price and date change on the cover is the only difference between these early Silver Age US cents copies and the UK price variants. With script by Stan Lee, art by Steve Ditko and lettering by Johnny D, the issue begins with a splash page featuring a classic Steve Ditko image of Spider-Man being hounded by a crowd led by Jonah Jameson declaring, "Freak! Public menace!" Something that would go on to define the Spider-Man run and extend even into his adventures on the big screen in the Sony Spider-Man and Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. It also includes a note regarding Spider-Man's first appearance in Amazing Fantasy 15 and the subsequent response from fans, letters and postcards that led to Marvel committing to his own ongoing series and the promise of a summary of his origin. You'll also note that a date stamp of 19th of October 1965 is on the splash page of this particular copy. The first page kicks off with a teenage Peter Parker in his bedroom, discarding his costume, decrying his inability to save his Uncle Ben, before recounting his origin of being bitten by a radioactive spider, gaining his amazing powers, his brief stint in show business as a performer, and how that ultimately led to his uncle's sad demise. Changed into his regular clothes, Peter descends the stairs and shares that he and his aunt are alone and money is tight, with May asking their landlord, who is at the door, for more time to pay the rent. Once the landlord leaves, Peter suggests to May that he may have to leave school to get a job to support her, but May insists that Peter continue his studies and become the scientist his Uncle Ben always dreamed of for him. Unconvinced, Peter thinks of ways using his powers, including turning to crime, to try and help his aunt's situation. However, Peter knows right and wrong, declaring, "But no, what am I thinking? I'm no criminal, I'm no thief," before deciding to try his hand at performing again and to call a booking agent. A few days later, Peter is at school in the lab, whilst his schoolmates talk about going to the Spider-Man show that evening, which Peter excuses himself from. Peter, as Spider-Man, performs his show and afterwards asks the agent for his fee, who advises that he has to issue a cheque and asks his name. A shocked Peter refused to share his identity and instead asks for the cheque to be made out to Spider-Man instead. However, as his agent advises, he has issues cashing it in with the bank. Meanwhile, Jonah Jameson is hunched over a typewriter, drafting a negative article on Spider-Man. Next night, Peter returns to perform his show, only to find his agent advising that there'll be no more shows, as Spider-Man has been declared as a menace in the newspaper editorial, and that he'd be arrested and face jail time if he performed again. Jonah Jameson, now revealed as the publisher of the Daily Bugle, performs lectures throughout the city, decrying our hero as a bad influence on kids today before holding up his own son, John Jameson, a test pilot, as an example of a real hero. Peter, meanwhile, who picks up a copy of the Daily Bugle, bemoans why Spider-Man can't have it easy like the Fantastic Four or Ant-Man. Realising he can't make a living as Spider-Man, Peter turns to the classified section and decides to try and find a part-time job. Later, while searching in vain for a role, Peter spots Aunt May heading to a pawn shop where she pawns her jewellery. Guilt-ridden, Peter overhears the Daily Bugle newspaper seller announcing that Jonah Jameson's son is about to orbit the Earth. Infuriated and blaming Jameson for his misfortune, Peter pounds the wall, vowing to earn some money somehow. Ironically, the ad featured on the opposite page advertises a quick opportunity to make money by starting your own business as an air conditioning franchise. Part 2. With nothing better to do, Peter heads to the launch of the rocket John Jameson is piloting. Peter oversees Jonah Jameson sending off his son before the rocket launches and the capsule carrying John Jameson is set into orbit. In orbit, the guidance system breaks loose, causing the capsule to lose control, dooming John Jameson. On the ground, the technicians in the control center try in vain to save the capsule. Meanwhile, Peter grabs his mask. Donning his costume, Spider-Man makes his way to the control center, where outside a window he hears a general and Jonah Jameson talking about an impossible way to save the capsule by somehow getting a spare guidance unit up to John Jameson. With that, Spider-Man climbs in through the window, declaring he can help to get the system up there, before leaping out of the window again with Jonah Jameson barracking from behind him. Spider-Man, evading an armed guard by covering in webs, commandeers a jet and a pilot who flies him up to the capsule before climbing out of the cockpit with the capsule in view. Spider-Man shoots his web shooters at the capsule, latches on and manages to reach it. Part 3. Now hanging onto the capsule, Spider-Man fits the new guidance system and inside John Jameson is able to regain control and deploy the parachute to safely land. Peter, ecstatic, jumps off and rushes home before being spotted, convinced he'd be held up as a hero for saving John Jameson and the capsule. However, next day, Peter is shocked and astounded to see the Daily Bugle editorial demanding that Spider-Man be arrested and prosecuted. Jonah Jameson continues his crusade on Spider-Man, accusing him of sabotaging the capsule, unlawfully breaking into the base, commandeering a plane and ultimately causing the missile test to fail. Unfortunately for Peter, because of the Daily Bugle and Jonah Jameson's tirades, a reward is offered for Spider-Man's capture, illustrated by this iconic wanted poster. We close our story with Peter at home, reading the Daily Bugle, agonising over his predicament, whilst Aunt May's long-term concern about the horrible Spider-Man is vocalised. Spider-Man vs. the Chameleon. For our second story this issue, once again Stan Lee scripts with Steve Ditko on art duties, but this time John Duffy takes lettering honours. This splash page features Spider-Man swinging across the city with the Chameleon looming over, besides a panel featuring the Fantastic Four, Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, Sue Storm, aka Invisible Girl, Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, and Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. Peter is suddenly struck with an idea. He can make money by joining the Fantastic Four and heads to the Baxter Building. However, he soon realises that he can't make his way up to them easily after forcing the door of their private elevator, only to find the elevator car is blocking his path. Not to be dissuaded, he suits up and instead tight walks across from a neighbouring building. However, he is spotted by the crowd of onlookers below, and at that moment an alarm sounds, alerting the Fantastic Four to an intruder. Via their monitors, the team identified Spider-Man moments before he drops through an open window, only to be caught in a plexiglass cage, which he quickly breaks free from. The Thing rushes and soft punches Spider-Man, only to be thrown into the Human Torch. Mr. Fantastic stretches his arms to make a grab for him, but Spidey spins webs around himself, trapping his hands. Invisible Girl tries to lasso him, but Spider-Man senses the attack and evades it before Human Torch circles him in flames. Spider-Man leaps to the ceiling before Mr. Fantastic expands himself to shield his teammates from him, and Spidey explains he wants to join the team, asking for a job and salary. The incredulous FF team explain they are a non-profit organisation and only make enough money to support their research and activities before they, like the rest of the city, mistake Spider-Man as a wanted outlaw. Disappointed that the team are just like everyone else, Spidey leaps from the window as they call out to him. The team look on as Invisible Girl expresses her disappointment at his sudden departure, as they could have helped him, whilst the Thing chides her as they already have enough to worry about. Mr. Fantastic explains to them both that he thinks they'll hear from him again soon. Meanwhile, the Chameleon in a nearby defence building disguises himself as a captured janitor to infiltrate a laboratory, again disguising himself as a Professor Newton. Later, at his hideout, he reveals his plan to sell secrets to the Soviets, whilst watching the news on a monitor with a story about Spider-Man seeking to join the Fantastic Four. Somehow realising that Spider-Man is looking for a way to earn money, he hatches a plan to use Spider-Man as a fall guy to cover for his plans to sell more defence secrets to the highest bidder. Next, we are greeted with a personal message from Spider-Man splash page, introducing the upcoming Spider's Web letters page, slated for issue 3, as well as promoting issue 2. In addition, there's a special note that explains the letters page wouldn't feature in issue 2, as the rationale that this issue would be at the printers when the reader is reading this book. Taking advantage of Spider-Man's senses, the Chameleon broadcasts a message to meet on a nearby building later that evening, promising a rich reward. Peter hears the message and changes into his Spider-Man costume. Shortly before the rendezvous, the Chameleon uses his ability to infiltrate the building before donning a Spider-Man suit, stealing the missile defense plans and making his way to the roof to escape in his awaiting helicopter. Spider-Man arrives on the roof shortly after, passing the Chameleon in his helicopter, and as soon as he lands, he is confronted by the guards who try to arrest him for stealing the secret plans. Spider-Man is able to hold them at bay with his web and escapes, deducing that the perpetrator must be in the helicopter, using his spinal senses to hone in on his location. Using his webs, he creates a slingshot to fling himself to follow the helicopter, web parachuting down to a nearby port. Jumping in a boat, Spider-Man sees the helicopter about to land on a Soviet submarine surfacing. Using his webs again, he seals the hatch on the sub, causing the Soviets to resubmerge and leave. Meanwhile, Spider-Man shoots his web at the helicopter to climb up and rips the door off to confront and capture the Chameleon piloting the aircraft, suspecting them to be a communist as well. Landing the helicopter and back on the building's roof, Spider-Man hands over the Chameleon, but not before the Chameleon drops a smoke pellet and tries to make his escape, changing his appearance to that of a police officer. However, Spider-Man senses him, so the Chameleon turns off the power, leaving the guards, police and Spider-Man in the darkness. Still sensing him, but out of web fluid, Spider-Man leaps to the ceiling to try and block his exit before leaping down and capturing the Chameleon. But the police mistake Spidey as the Chameleon in disguise. Spider-Man breaks free and makes his escape, but luckily in the struggle, the police recognise the Chameleon's Spider-Man suit under his uniform disguise. Meanwhile, Spider-Man sobs, wishing he'd never gotten his powers. Our issue draws to a close, with the Fantastic Four reading the Daily Bugle days later, lamenting our hero, how powerful he'll become, and whether they'll come across him again. The rest of the issue closes out with a number of ads before we end this page-by-page review with the final back cover advertisement. I hope you enjoyed that showcase of the original copy of The Amazing Spider-Man 1. We've also recently shown a page-by-page of The Incredible Hulk 2, and you can watch that video here. We'll have plenty more of these page-by-page and we've got other key issues coming soon, so make sure you like and subscribe to see more. Some of the future videos in this series will include Amazing Spider-Man number 2, 13, 14 and 15, Fantastic Four 12 and 26, as well as Journey into Mystery 103. But please leave a comment down below and tell us what other books you'd like to see in this series. As always, thanks for watching and see you soon.